All right, you guys. It's been a little while. Glad to see you all. I'm now on the other side of Florida. I'm up in North Florida working out of Jacksonville, and I am really excited today. I have a physician guest that he's the kind of doctor I've been looking for a long time. And I just recently found him through social media. His name is Dr. Soham Patel. He's an endocrinologist in Brandon, Florida, which is a suburb east of Tampa. And he is a brother from a different mother. And we've just kind of gotten to know each other for the last few minutes before starting the recording. And I really, really hope that whoever needs to hear this really integrates this. And spoiler alert, we all need to hear it. I mean, even if we're not diagnosed with a disease yet, like diabetes, our food supply. Anybody who knows me knows I rant about it all the time. Our food supply is so toxic, and insulin resistance and liver disease is just so prominent. I see it working in a level 3 hospital now in Jacksonville. I see super, super sick pregnant people all the time. And these are people in their 20s who have diseases of 60 and 70-year olds, and it complicates their pregnancies severely. And to a very, very, very large degree, these are lifestyle diseases that can be modified and totally reversed. So I'm going to stop talking. Dr. Patel, you take it from here. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Dr. Hankinson. It's been a pleasure, and I share the same feelings that you have. It's been amazing to get this opportunity to interact on your platform and share my experience. As you guys just heard, I'm in Brandon, Tampa, which is a suburb of Tampa, and I have my solo endocrine lifestyle medicine focused practice where I see adult patients 18 years up, involving all kinds of metabolic diseases from diabetes, all kinds of diabetes, type 1, type 1.5, type 2, gestational diabetes for the patients in my practice who get pregnant, and also a lot of autoimmune thyroid conditions from Hashimoto's to Graves, a fair bit of PCOS, which again affects a lot of, population. And I think, a common theme is the issues we have with our food, water, air supply, and our lifestyles and vitamin D levels. I think those three aspects play a huge role in what our health would look like, whether it would be in a good range or in not so good situation. So I
So
think
give us a little history. How long have you been in practice? Where did you train? All those kind of things.
So I was born and brought up in India, the western state of India called Gujarat, and I did my schooling, including my med school there, from BJ Medical College. It's one of the oldest medical colleges of India, founded in 1969. Um, so I did my med school, came here, and I did my fellowship residency in internal medicine at UT, University of Tennessee, Knoxville.
Okay.
And then I came down to UAB in Birmingham, did my fellowship, endocrine fellowship there. And right out of fellowship, I joined a practice here in Tampa, where I worked for 3 years as an associate, and things were not working out. So then I broke apart and opened my own practice in 2018.
So
Um,
you've been an independent doc for 7 years then.
yeah, so
Yeah.
in practice in Tampa area for a decade, but
Okay.
in my own practice since 2018. Yes.
Right, right. And so just for people who don't know how it works with medical training is he's an internist first, which is usually 3 years, and then fellowships 2 years after that.
My endocrine fellow, I did clinicals, so it was 2 years. There are certain, research-based endocrine fellowships which are 3 years, but mine was
Okay.
2 years.
Yeah, yeah. Great. And generally speaking, if you had to break down percentage of patients with diagnoses, what would they be?
So again, like I said, what I see a whole lot of insulin resistance,
Right.
which then manifest either as type 2 diabetes, pre-diabetes, someone who is, can present as gestational diabetes, PCOS, a huge
Which
population
of
with
course I see every
PCOS,
day. Yeah.
high blood pressure, high cholesterol. Um, that's a huge chunk. And then I also see a fair bit of thyroid issues, which again, from one extreme, which is Hashimoto's, which is underactive thyroid, an autoimmune condition, and then the other extreme is Graves', which is overactive thyroid. But I
Not
also
to,
see,
not to pull this on you, but we didn't talk about this ahead of time. Are you familiar with David Brownstein?
I have that name has come up, and
He's Dr. Iodine when it
yeah,
comes to thyroid issues. It's very
yeah.
interesting.
I think we'll have to do a separate,
Right, right.
video on thyroid because I have my own take about that from what
Good.
I've, seen from my practice.
Uh-huh.
But a third category of thyroid patients that I see is also patients who have been insulin resistant, either over years of prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, who then essentially, in my observation, like clockwork, within 5 to 10 years of being diabetic, now they have thyroid issues.
Hmm.
And when I check for autoimmune situations, they don't have the antibodies. And
Hmm.
again, antibodies can be fluctuating. They can be high, they can be low. It's not like they may be high all the time. But what I find when they do adopt lifestyle changes and improve their vitamin D levels, their thyroid situation improves. And then in those situations, I'm able to get them off their thyroid hormone.
Interesting. Because
Or if they are just starting
that's
to,
news to me because I would have assumed all thyroid disease is autoimmune and there's a lot of people with different beliefs about how we get to that. But that's interesting. Almost like we were talking about fat globules in muscle cells. Do you think the thyroid can pull up fat and
so no, no, thyroid doesn't pull up fat. What happens is the endocrine system, the hormone systems are very interconnected.
right?
One hormone goes wacky, it doesn't just limit its use to that hormone, effects. It starts spilling into other hormone cycles.
Yeah.
So if your insulin is staying high all the time, which is not how your body designed to handle that. It's designed to handle it going up when you eat and then come down during the fasting state and then go up when you eat and then come down again. But because of our modern lifestyle, we are constantly going from spikes to another spike to another spike to
We don't
another
let
spike
ourselves get hungry.
all day long. So there is no fasting state essentially, even when we sleep, because we tend to eat something before going to bed,
Yeah.
and that creates another spike of insulin for a few hours into your sleep. So again, that's a whole different topic. But so going back to insulin, so when your insulin levels start staying this high, it starts messing with other hormones. We have seen where patients who have type 2 diabetes for long years start having issues with low testosterone because their insulin resistance is getting worse. As soon as they make changes, their diabetes get better, and insulin resistance starts improving, their testosterone level starts coming up without doing anything.
Or unless you're a woman and then your testosterone goes up because of anovulation, which is a problem.
Yes.
But again, it connects all that interrelationship you're talking about.
So going to thyroid, what I've seen clinically is that insulin being high essentially starts, and I don't know the molecular basis of what the actual mechanism is, but what I've clinically seen is when insulin levels stay high, it starts interfering with the TSH signaling. So in other words, you will see patients having creeping up TSH levels on their labs, and their free T4, free T3 are still in a good range. And again, the immediate response by others is just go and put them on thyroid hormone. But if we can actually work on the root cause of insulin resistance, then the TSH normalizes and things go back to normal and they don't need to be on any medicines.
Yeah. So let's back up a little bit. So you're certified in lifestyle medicine,
Yes,
and I'm
that's
not
my third board
100% sure
certification.
if that means plant-based or it could mean plant-based. So are you
So
a plant-based focused doctor?
So the way lifestyle medicine, it's all the six pillars. So it's nutrition, it's activity, it's sleep, hygiene, it's stress management, it's connectedness, and avoidance of toxins. So all
Oh, there
the
you go.
six aspects. And the way I think we gather more benefits is by going more plant predominant. And that's my approach as well. Is if someone wants to go 100% whole food plant based, they're free to do that. I am myself 100% whole food plant based. Uh, but it is not that you have to be 100% to start seeing the benefits. Even if you're eating 80% meat and 20% vegetables, every 10% increase in the intake of vegetables and fruits is going to start giving you more benefits. So for one to see a lot of benefits, they want to at least get to 80-90% of whole plant foods. And again, after that, they can decide how much more they want to go. They can go 100% if they choose to, but a lot of health benefits can be, received by increasing the amount of whole plant foods. So I always say plant predominant and not plant exclusive, because that again makes, depending on what the person's perspective and their life before my interaction is, they may either take it or they may not take the advice, and that's not what I want. I want them to apply changes. So I start with, and I continue hand holding them through the journey by keeping the messaging as going plant predominant and whole foods, not vegan junk. I
Right.
reinforce
And
that
that,
eating
yeah.
100% vegan but vegan junk is equally unhealthy.
Nothing processed. Yeah. And I tell patients, if they're going to eat meat, at least buy the super expensive certified organic free range. And that alone is a limiting factor because then you're paying $30, $40 a pound. And then you can be more like the Asians that use meat for flavoring rather than like the typical American where the whole plate is the T-bone steak, that kind of
So
thing.
that's the actual word I use. I tell my patients, you want to eat whole plant foods and fill up the plate with that, focusing on fruits, beans, vegetables, and whole grains, and a handful of nuts and seeds. And then use meat or whatever type of animal food you like as a flavor, as a side dish, not the main course.
Now,
Yeah.
have you always been like this, or is this a revelation? I mean, of course, I have this bias thinking that Indians eat better than Americans. Is that true, or was this something
Yes and
that
no. I
came
think there is
later on?
obviously a traditional cultural impact of how, the home cooked meals are prepared. And there are so many cuisines across India, which each has a different story and, history into it. Um, and that's changing as well, as more westernized influences are coming through there. There's Pizza Hut and KFC and McDonald's in India too. So
Mhm.
things are changing. But uh, so I grew up eating lacto-vegetarian, meaning I consumed dairy. I had lots of milk and yogurt, and I had eggs till the age of 6, a few times, boiled eggs here and there. When my dad would eat, he would make one for me, but he stopped when I was 6, and so after that, I was just having vegetarian with
So that
dairy.
wasn't your choice. That was just a family decision, huh?
Yeah, and again,
Okay.
I think I'm happy that that happened, but yeah, it was not that we had it all the time. I think we may had eggs, boiled eggs, maybe once a month or something like that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, but that stopped after 6, and then again, I had a lot of dairy. I used to consume at least anywhere from 700 ml to a liter of milk a day, and a pound to pound and a half of yogurt, homemade yogurt a day,
Yeah.
and obviously a bunch of butter and ghee, and cheese was not on a daily basis, but few times a
Now,
month.
what about now? Would it
Now
come?
I've been dairy free for 11 years now. November 2014 is when I went dairy free,
Yeah, I found
and
that to be one of the easier things, although true confessions, I still have not found anything to put into coffee that I like as much as organic half and half. So a tablespoon or two is where I try to draw the line, but I can't lie to my audience. But
so I don't drink much tea or coffee as a routine, but again, once in a while, if there are friends or whatever and everybody's making it, I may have a cup. But what we do is we keep Westlife organic soy milk.
mm,
And so we brew the tea or coffee, whatever it is, in water. And then if it's tea, then we add ginger and other spices. And then once it's already all brewed up and boiled, that's when we add the milk at medium heat, turn down the heat to medium, and then add the milk and let it simmer for another minute or two. and after that you
So
strain
many
it.
there's so many topics we could go into because now I'm
Sure.
getting to talk about
So with that,
my
we have
kombucha
had friends.
recipes and all these other things. But
Uh,
let's go back a little bit. So you've used this word insulin resistance. What is insulin resistance? I'm
so
a
in
patient
simple
coming
terms,
in wanting to
uh,
know.
when insulin doesn't do what it's supposed to do in your body, that's what we call insulin
So what does
resistance.
insulin do?
So insulin does so many different things, but one of the main things that insulin has to do is um, be essentially the gatekeeper of glucose, the sugar molecule into your cells. Now, there are certain types of tissue, like your brain cells, like your red blood cells, and your pancreas beta cells. Those three tissues and a portion of the kidneys, the renal medulla, which is very metabolically active. Those tissues do not require insulin action for glucose uptake, meaning the glucose can enter those tissues and cells without any insulin gatekeeping.
Sorry,
Every other tissue.
I'm moving my computer here because I'm noticing that these background shutters keep fluctuating and it's very distracting. Sorry. So, okay, so we all need insulin, very important in multiple, I think in terms obviously in blood sugar control. So what do a lot of people have insulin resistance? How do they get it? And
So the main organ that insulin works in helping the glucose being taken up is the liver. Liver cells, again, liver does a lot of things, metabolism of hormones, detoxification, all the food metabolism, all that happens with the liver. But one of the key things for the liver to do is respond to insulin and open the receptors, not receptors, but the glucose transmitter channels, which are essentially floating inside the cell. So imagine this is a cell in the liver, and there are these little channels like tubes that are floating inside the cell, which are called the glucose transporter channels. Glucose cannot directly enter, but the channels can allow glucose to enter. When insulin binds on its receptor, all the different chemical reactions happening from that binding of the insulin to the receptor then leads to this glucose channels that are floating inside the cell to go plug into the cell wall. And so that's essentially opening up entry point for the glucose to enter the cell. Then it's taken up by the mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of the cell, and that generates a molecule called ATP, which is the energy molecule that provides energy for every function that happens in the cell and the tissues and the body. So when there is more buildup of fat from all the things we eat, excess calories, all these excess toxins, then that the liver cannot break down like forever chemicals, and that makes the liver create more fat as a means to absorb those toxins and hide them. Um, all those other reasons, the fat buildup in the liver cells makes the insulin receptor resistant, meaning now that glucose molecule that's outside in the blood, which needs to enter into the cell, cannot make entry because the receptor thinks there is enough energy in the system. It doesn't need more energy coming in form of glucose into the cell. So insulin binds to the receptor, but all the chemical reactions that should happen inside the cell that allows these channels to plug into the cell wall doesn't happen.
yeah, I've
So
always kind of thought of it as like a lock and key.
yes.
And if the key is the wrong key, it's not going to open the lock and it's not going to allow passage.
So now this high sugar stimulates your pancreas to produce more insulin, which initially higher insulin production gets the job done to get the glucose into the cell. But the glucose that goes into the cell because of high insulin levels is now not being utilized into energy generation but being converted into fat. And you create more fat buildup in the cells, and to a point where the liver cells get so much full with fat that they start exporting the fat to other tissues in form of this VLDL triglyceride molecules that start floating in the bloodstream, and then now those VLDL triglyceride complexes are taken up by other tissues. So the muscle cells take them up, and they start building up more triglyceride levels in the cells, which then makes the insulin receptor on muscles not responding to insulin. So now sugar,
Just a cyclical, and
yeah,
then
so you go
you
from
didn't mention
liver,
it, but high fructose corn syrup must play a role in here too, right?
yeah, yes. So you go from liver insulin resistance to muscle insulin resistance. Now, the same complex of VLDL triglycerides also ends up in the beta cells, the pancreas beta cells that produce insulin, and those are the only type of cells in the body that can produce insulin. So now buildup of triglycerides in the beta cells essentially hampers the beta cells' ability to produce insulin.
Ah, there you
Dr.
go.
Roy Taylor from UK, he has done some very seminal work in this, whole mechanisms, and it's called the double hypothesis, because on one end your insulin is not working like it should on the liver and the muscles, and on the other hand your body's ability to produce insulin is also going down, so you get a double whammy. And that's how you go from insulin resistance for years to then pre-diabetes to then type 2 diabetes. And all this high insulin states makes your blood pressure go up, makes your cholesterol go up. Insulin resistance starts messing up with your menstrual cycles for women, which then leads to PCOS, because the pathway again is insulin staying high, then stimulates your pituitary gland to produce more LH, luteinizing hormone, which then promotes more testosterone production from the adrenal gland, and that high testosterone levels then starts messing up with your normal monthly cycles, and you get
And
acne and hair growth and all the things that come down from that.
right. And I see that a lot in GYN, especially young girls who are morbidly obese and wondering why they're not having cycles and etc. Um, Now that's all the bad news. The good news is there's things we can do about it.
Yes,
Now, so again, why don't you quickly differentiate type 2 diabetes, which is not only the inability to use the insulin and then having a feedback loop actually damaging the pancreas, to type 1 diabetes.
so type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune condition where from then many different reasons, but one of the factors is cow milk, and the antigens found in cow milk have been shown in studies to stimulate an immune response against those antigens, which then cross reacts with your beta cells and creates an attack on the pancreas, which then takes out your ability to produce insulin. So with type 1 diabetes, typically it's diagnosed in the first decade of life, and it's complete loss of beta cells in the body. So you go from making insulin to not making insulin in a very short duration, and that then manifests with something called diabetic ketoacidosis, where your sugars are very high. It messes up your electrolyte balances, your ability to get rid of the carbon dioxide from the body, so your body becomes acidotic, and that's where you end up in the hospital, and you need fluids and insulin and
And people who
things.
know me know that 2 of my 3 boys are type 1s, and my youngest was diagnosed at age 2. One day after boating, I noticed him urinating like a racehorse, and it was quite remarkable. And the next day, we checked his sugar, and it was 850
Yeah.
at the pediatrician's office. And on my Rumble account, we will post a video maybe in the future with other causes of type 1 diabetes. But because I don't want this to get censored on YouTube, we'll move on. So it's an autoimmune condition attacking the beta cells brought on by different toxins. I think that's a safe way to say it. And then, but you can, and this is something that most people are not aware, or even residents that I talk to every day, that the idea concept never even occurs to them. You can become insulin resistant as a type 1 diabetic.
Yes. So I always tell patients as I'm explaining that even with type 1 diabetes, but unfortunately following the same advice that has been given to them for years about eating small meals frequently, eating more fat and protein and less carbs, without understanding the quality of carbs, complex versus simple, that leads to worsening of insulin resistance. So even if the insulin that you're taking, because you're not producing any, so you are taking insulin shots or you're on an insulin pump, either way, the insulin getting inside the body over time starts not responding to the insulin. So then you need more amount of insulin to do the same job, and then your sugars are going up and down, and you go from 400 to a 40 and up and down, roller coaster all the time, which affects your whole body, your brain, your eyes, your heart, your kidneys, immune system. Everything gets affected with those crazy sugar roller coasters. And so that is also very, very common. And typically I see when someone is type 1 diabetic after 20-30 years of type 1 diabetes, and they have followed all the advice they have been given, they end up in that secondary insulin resistance on top of primary insulin deficiency. And it sounds
Right.
like an oxymoron, but that is the case, because
Well, no,
they
I
don't
mean,
produce
again,
insulin, but the one they take doesn't seem to respond like it should.
yeah,
So
and
they
again,
go
like,
from needing about 20, 25 units of total insulin a day when they were diagnosed at, even at adult, so obviously they're diagnosed early on, they may need even less. But by adult age, most of them need between 20 and 30 units of insulin. But from there, now they're needing 80, 100, 150 units of insulin per day over 20 years of, insulin resistance building up. So
yeah,
that's the
but
one that
again,
can be improved upon.
like we discussed earlier, and people who know me know my story, but one of my two boys I lost to a hypoglycemic episode when he was 22, and I'm convinced that happened 9 years ago, and I learned about plant-based eating about 6 years ago. And I'm convinced that if we weren't following the recommendations that he was given at the time, which is high protein, high fat, low carb, he would have been alive and well today with an A1C of 5. And that's what I've seen in my practice since then, both for type 2s and type 1s. So obviously, this topic is very close to my heart. I'm glad to say my other son, who was the one who was actually diagnosed at a younger age, he is doing very well and he's very health focused. And I don't know what his latest A1C is, but I'll bet you it's very good. So,
So there is a third type of diabetes that is also very common, which is finally now picking up in the literature and on the public, conversations and, public announcement, articles and stuff, is type 1.5 diabetes, or LADA, latent autoimmune diabetes of adulthood. And a lot of patients get misdiagnosed as type 2 because it typically happens in the third, fourth, fifth, sixth decade of life. And again, the autoimmune mechanisms are very similar to type 1 diabetes. So again, we're not going to go in the cause of why, but it's an autoimmune condition. But the difference is that there is not complete beta cell loss. So you still have some beta cells that are survived from that autoimmune attack. And so those patients are producing some insulin, and which prevents them from going into ketoacidosis. So they don't end up in ketoacidosis, but their sugars stay high. And they see effects of the sugars being high. And so because they're in their third to sixth decade of life, they're labeled as type 2, and they put on metformin or glimepiride or one of these oral other medications, and the sugars don't respond. They stay high. If you look at those
and
patients,
some of those guys produce enough to just go with lifestyle. Have you seen that?
they have to be really early on in that disease process. I have one patient who has LADA, who has been able to go into remission. She was on
Mhm.
insulin for a year and a half, and then for the last almost 10 months as of now, she's been off of insulin and her A1C is staying 5 without
Yeah,
any
I
treatment.
have patients like that too, and when they break down and eat poorly, they'll see a spike. But if they can keep their diet where they want it to be, they can really keep those sugars in good control.
Yeah. So, and
And
if you
we've been
look at
seeing
these
that a lot
patients,
more since we had a certain pharmaceutical intervention enter our lives about 5 years ago. I don't know if you've seen that, but I've been seeing it because I asked that question.
there's
So,
definitely an uptick in diabetes and type 1.5 diabetes that we have seen clinically.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
And if you look at these patients with type 1.5, they are not the typical type 2 with more weight. They're typically more muscular. They may not even have much abdominal fat. So anybody who is treating patients with diabetes or has a family member that has diabetes diagnosed in the third to sixth decade of life, but their sugars are not coming down on just oral medicines, please get a C-peptide level checked. Ask your doctor to get a C-peptide level check along with the glucose and find out what it is, because C-peptide measures how much insulin your body is producing. So even for someone who is taking insulin, you can still measure C-peptide. But if the C-peptide level is less than 0.8 and your sugars are running 2 and 300, you know that you're not producing enough insulin and you will have to start some insulin as you may work on lifestyle changes. But you want to get your sugars down so that you can preserve the cells that are still hanging on in your pancreas producing insulin, because the high sugars constantly can essentially cause those beta cells to die from a
Yeah, that's what I
process
was going
called
to mention because I've
apoptosis.
always been on the belief that high sugars are also toxic to beta cells.
Yeah,
So,
glucotoxicity can
absolutely.
induce apoptosis, which is this programmed cell death.
Right, right. So, so how do you let's go to a typical new patient visit. I'll just use an example of a patient I had yesterday. She's fresh in my mind. Well, we can. Do you want to bring in the fact she's pregnant or leave that out for the moment?
I'm fine. Yeah, that's
Either
fine.
way. So in this case, this woman came in. She didn't know how pregnant she was. She's 16 weeks. She was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes 6 years ago. She used to be on insulin. She lost insurance, and so she stopped taking insulin for last 2 years. And she comes in yesterday with a blood sugar of 380, and everything else is fine. And if I can get her in front of you, how would you approach her?
So the first thing I'll briefly try to explain how insulin works in like 2-3 minutes so that they understand, what's happening. And then also explain why we need to get the sugars controlled, because she's pregnant right now. That sugars has a bearing not only on her health, but the fetus's and the future baby's health. And so, the understand the gravity of why we need to make changes and make those changes faster because we are on a timeline. And the first thing I would check for is if they are taking any kind of sugary or artificial flavored beverages like soda and sweet tea or diet this and diet that. I would have them take all of that off and just stick to water. And if they don't like the taste of plain water, they can put a slice of cucumber or lemon or mint leaves or ginger, whatever they like, add that naturally, but start hydrating with water. And also reverse osmosis cleaned water, because there are too many toxins in the water supply. So that's also, something to pay attention to if possible.
We have a reverse osmosis system that we bought portable. They're not even expensive.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I probably know which brand you're talking about, but yeah, there are portable systems that you can carry along. You can just put them in the back of your car and they are good to go. All you need is a plug to plug in.
Right.
Um, Second would be vitamin D, which I won't even check their vitamin D because I can guarantee their vitamin D is low. So I would put them on vitamin D with K2 combination. Again, everybody varies, but generally I find 5,000 units of vitamin D3 with 100 micrograms of vitamin K2. That combination works well, taking one a day with food, so you get the best absorption. And then go into, the four aspects: food, activity, stress management, and and sleep.
Yeah. Sleep's a
So
big one.
all four are equally important. Again, without getting into overwhelming, you want to start making steady changes on all of those four. So food wise, I would start, encouraging more whole plant foods, eating more fruits and vegetables. And yes, it's okay to eat fruits. Eat them in the earlier half of the day. Don't blend them, don't juice them. Eat the actual fruit. whatever is in season,
Fiber, fiber, fiber.
fiber, and don't combine fruit with fats. So don't have fruit with, don't have apple with a slice of a slice of apple with peanut butter. It will make your sugar stay high longer. If you just eat the fruit, your sugar will go up, but then will come down within 30 minutes.
Yep.
Versus if you eat with peanut butter or any other fat, it may not go up as high, but it will stay high for 2-3 hours. So the area under the curve is bigger with combining fat. Adding more variety of vegetables, whatever they like, whatever they can add. Adding more lentils and beans. Again, start with a couple spoons a day, go to
Black
quarter
beans are
cup a
my
day,
favorite.
half a cup, 1 cup, gradually work up so they can get their microbiome adjusted and
Yeah,
not.
and like you said, what I say all the time is, I mean, I use the example that if I eat a banana, my sugars won't spike. If this patient eats a banana, her sugars will spike. So it's not the banana, it's the environment that the banana is going into. So at the beginning of reversing insulin resistance, sure, you're going to probably have to be more stringent and avoid the sugary, even the natural things. But as you metabolize that fat out of your cells and your insulin resistance drops, I mean, we might as well talk about these guys at Mastering Diabetes. You know them. I promote their book all the time, but they'll eat a bowl. They're both type 1 diabetics. They'll eat a bowl of mangoes and bananas and white potatoes while watching their pump monitor showing no spike. It's just incredible. And I think what's the average carb to insulin ratio? Maybe 10 to 1 typically.
So ideally, it should be more like, if you're insulin sensitive, it should be more like 1 to 25 or 1 to
Right, that's my
30.
point. But typically, when someone
But
comes
what I
in, it's
clinically
there.
see all the time, it's like
Yeah,
more,
because my
especially
boys,
someone
we
very
always
insulin
used kind of
resistant.
10 to 1 typically.
Yeah,
Someone
so
from
that's the typical, but I have patients who are on like 1 to 2. So
oh
for
yeah.
every 2 grams of carbs, they need 1 unit of insulin.
Well, correct me, but I think Robbie's even higher than that. I think he's like in the
Close
30s
to
or something.
50. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it is reversible, and it's not that hard. I mean, yes, I use the phrase all the time that it might be simple but not easy, right? I mean, if a guy's drinking a liter of vodka a day, it's really simple to just say stop drinking. That may or may not be easy because
Yeah.
our society is so filled with garbage, and that garbage hits our brain centers, and the casomorphins, the glutamorphins that I'm sure you're aware of. There's a reason we love that fast food stuff. I mean, we feel really good, when we do it. Um, and yet, I think if you can make the dedication to resist in the beginning, those cravings drop just like any addiction. And so I just tell patients, gorge yourself, but gorge yourself on the right stuff. You know, eat. I really get excited when a patient says she loves broccoli. I'm like, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so fruits, vegetables, beans, and whole grains. And then a handful of nuts and seeds. In
Yeah,
that direction, working on as best as possible sleep hygiene, so not having electronic devices for an hour before bedtime,
clean water, like you
clean
said.
water, having movement. It doesn't mean you spend an hour in the gym. Just a quick 10-minute walk after a meal can do wonders to your blood sugars and help you lower
Get a
insulin
dog.
resistance.
Yeah,
So, and just, some simple things like deep breathing, meditation, whatever that helps you keep your day-to-day stressors down.
yeah,
Basic stuff, but works very well if you do it with the right focus. I have a very, kind of a fantastic story to share. A patient who had a very high degree of insulin resistance and PCOS. And by the time I saw the patient, she had already gone through 8 years of reproendo and IUIs and IVFs and had not been able to conceive. And sees me, and we go, we spend an hour talking about all these things. And I think she and her husband were really ready for this change because they had gone through every possible scenario. and they go all the way in, and 3 months later I get a phone call she was pregnant,
Yeah, I've seen it
and
over and
that
over.
baby is now 4 years.
Yeah.
It is lowering insulin resistance can do wonders to your body.
Oh, absolutely. And it's just criminal that medicine hasn't absorbed this. It really is. Because, I mean, that's one of the main areas that I see is as a gynecologist infertility, which is anovulation, which is insulin resistance, and also dysfunctional bleeding. So they're not menstruating. So when they do bleed, it becomes an emergency and they go to the hospital, and they're both directly tied in, and it's just so sad that so few physicians even bring this issue up with patients. All they want to do is give them medication or give them treatments, and hopefully you and I can change some of that.
And that, to a huge extent, that is also from one, we are not taught about nutrition and all these lifestyle aspects in our training. And two, the whole insurance healthcare environment is set up in a way where it doesn't value all the things that you and I do, telling patients to do all these things and, kind of hand holding them as they work through those changes, because that takes time,
Yeah.
and that time is not valued. So
and yet
reimbursements,
and yet when you do get those patients where it clicks, I mean, it's very satisfying as a physician, isn't it?
it is.
Yeah.
But for us to have that widespread, change for more and more physicians to do this, the insurance models need to evolve where they
Yep.
value this care, because they talk about value-based care, but that the value is somewhere else.
Yep.
Um,
Well, tell the listener where you are, how to get a hold of you. By the way, do you do telehealth?
with the way insurances are working, I have not been doing telehealth because, again, the reimbursements for televisits
Now, if a
for most.
patient wanted to pay out of pocket, would that be a possibility?
So self-pay, as long as they're not Medicare, because I do take Medicare, so Medicare patients cannot do self-pay. But if they're self-pay, then I still need first visit in office and then one annual visit in office. But everything else can be televisit.
Okay, great. So, what's your office number? Or I want to make sure I'll put it in below too.
Sure.
Okay.
813-670-3228.
Say it again.
813-670-3228.
Perfect. All right, man. Well, this is fun. I don't want to make these too long because, attention spans aren't real great.
Sure.
We could go back into many different topics,
Yes.
which I would hopefully we can do in the future. So thank you very much. And
Thank
again,
you.
guys, latch into this guy, find him, look into the book called Mastering Diabetes, and also Mastering Diabetes on YouTube, on Instagram. Robbie is all over the place, and the results are just incredible for the people who are motivated enough to make these changes. So, all
Yes.
right, man. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. All right. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.